So that leaves for us to use outside insulin. So that's type 1 diabetes. And then type 2 diabetes is when we still have insulin, but because we've eaten so much sugar, our body is now resistant to our own insulin. And so the insulin basically doesn't work anymore, so we still need outside insulin to break down our blood sugar. And then gestational diabetes is a type of diabetes that develops in pregnancy, but it usually resolves after delivery. So then there are some short-term complications of diabetes. For type 1 diabetes, it's called DKA. So it's when the blood sugar is too high, like 350, 400. Normal ranges of diabetes, normal ranges of blood sugar is between 60 to 100. So if the blood sugar goes higher than that, so if it's at 250, you're gonna start to feel dizziness, shakiness. But at 350, 400, 500, the short-term complications are that your energy feels low, and then you can have difficulty breathing, you can go into vomiting, diarrhea, and even go into diabetic coma depending on how high the number is. It is the same similarity for diabetes type 2. The long-term complications of diabetes is that it can damage our body's organs. So it can cause coronary artery disease, it can cause plaques into our arteries, it can cause kidney issues, issues with the back of the eye, because we have arteries in the back of the eye, so it can cause retinopathy, which is high pressure in the optic nerve of the eye. It can cause skin infections, because if there's just a small wound, it will take a longer time for it to heal because the sugar is not controlled. It can cause hearing loss, it can cause issues with digesting. It takes longer to digest because everything's slower, everything's like a sludge. And it can cause neuropathy, which is numbness and tingling of the fingers and the toes. And then also amputation, because that same wound, it can take a long time and antibiotics doesn't work to the point where you kind of have to amputate a limb. Those are the long-term complications. So how diabetes is diagnosed is with fasting blood sugar. When it's your annual blood work time, you would go into the office and not eat for 8 to 12 hours. And then you would do what's called an A1C. It's a 3-month blood sugar average. You on a regular basis can check your blood sugars too, even when you're not diabetic, with what's called a glucometer machine, and you just do a finger stick, and your blood sugar should be between 60 to 100. If you have eaten, then it'll be in the 120s. It shouldn't be any more than 150. So, and the symptoms of diabetes are increased urine, increased thirst, blurry vision, and just an overwhelming fatigue feeling. In pregnancy, diabetes is tested with the oral glucose test that's done an hour apart, so it's different ways to test for it. The A1C test should be less than 5.7 when you go to do your annual blood work. So it's generally from 4.6 to 5.7. So as soon as it's higher than 5.7 to 6.4, you're in the pre-diabetic range. And then 6.5 and above, then you start to be in the diabetic phase. And then you gotta go to diet and exercise. You won't start on medication right away. You gotta start, you would wanna start diet and exercise even at the pre-diabetic range so you don't get to the 6.5 and above. And when someone is diagnosed with diabetes, the blood sugar should be 126 or less. That is the goal. So we just talked about management and treatment of diabetes. So again, blood sugar monitoring. Even when you're not diabetic, it's still a good practice to check your blood sugar here and there, especially when you're eating too much carbs and drinking too much soda and too much juices, cakes and sugars and cookies. It's a good habit to check your blood sugar here and there. When one is diabetic, you want to do your blood work every 3 months with your primary care. And if you're not diabetic, then once a year. So there's type 2 diabetics mostly take oral medications, and there's all kinds of different classes that's indicated to treat exactly what the symptoms are, versus type 1 diabetics usually are on insulin. And nowadays, there's better ways to control your blood sugars too. It's not just a finger prick. There's the G6, G7 sensors that you can put on the back of your hand, in your arm, and then there's the insulin pump. So there's all kinds of new technologies now working with an endocrinologist that you can, do to really monitor your blood sugar. And some other conditions that are associated with diabetes are blood pressure and high cholesterol. So when one is diagnosed with diabetes, you usually go on a blood cholesterol lowering medication as well to protect your coronary artery, because you can go into blockages and you're at a higher risk for heart disease. So, and then you want to manage your stress and manage your blood pressure as well. So the outlook of diabetes is very well based on how well you managed your blood sugar. So we talked about dieting and exercise, monitoring your blood sugars every year, with the glucometer machine, and just keeping on top of your wellness with your primary care. You really want to pay attention to that A1C number. And you really want to pay attention when you're at that 5.6, 5.7 number. And the moment you're in that pre-diabetic range is when you really, really want to turn the clock back so you don't go up to, being diagnosed with full-on diabetes. So again, diet, exercise, cutting sweets, rice, sugar, bread, juices, and soda. And that's the same for the prevention of diabetes, is what we just talked about. So quitting smoking, managing stress, limiting alcohol intake, exercise, healthy diet, all that good stuff. The last slide is living with diabetes / when to see a healthcare provider, and I think we've talked about that throughout the presentation, is to see the primary care every year, fasting 12 hours, make sure that your kidney functions are normal, your liver functions are normal, your A1C, your fasting blood sugar, and if you are diabetic, to make sure that you do your blood work every 3 months to stay on top of your A1C, to make sure that it is controlled, that it is nowhere above a 7.0, that it is in that 6.5, and can't even be reversed to lower than the 6.5. You may be diabetic and find yourself in the pre-diabetic range, and that's a good place to be. And you can manage diabetes with diet and exercise if you really, really work hard at it. And if you're at a higher number of the A1C, then you would want to have an endocrinologist, which is a specialist on your team together with your primary care doctor. That is the end of the presentation.